This is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
You got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, GOG. Let's go. What do you think for tonight?
You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the
Let's
Warriors.
go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like
above our head for the players.
literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Live. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo, here tonight. And yes, folks, the show is starting now. It's starting now. But what didn't start tonight was the engine of the Boston Celtics, as the Celtics, yikes, they fall 124-103 to the Miami Heat at the Garden after a historic West Coast road trip. The Boston Celtics come home to the parquet floor and lay out an absolute dud. We really have not seen this in 2 months, guys. I mean, the last time the Boston Celtics, they were down by double digits at half. It was February 6th against the Dallas Mavericks. All that time ago. Feels like the Celtics have completely rid themselves of a lot of the bad habits formed within the team back at the beginning of February. Yet tonight, those bad habits came out yet again. However, we'll get into whether those are concerning or not. But as we hear, welcome onto the show, Andrew Quinn. Welcome here, Andrew. Andrew joining here on Postgame. And of course, alongside of me tonight, Nick Franco, Griffin Aldridge down there at the bottom. You guys all know him. But you guys on the bottom there, Franco, Griffin, you know the drill. But Andrew, we'll go to you first here. Initial thoughts on tonight's game.
Initial thoughts, I think they just came out flat. I think, they might have went on that road trip. They went on a historic road trip, winning 6 straight games, 9 straight just in general. And coming back to home, there could be a thought that they had in their mind, they're like, we're coming home. We have great momentum. Maybe this will just be easy. You know what I mean? Maybe the crowd will be with us. Maybe we'll be able to just kind of pick up easy buckets and just kind of put the Heat in the rearview mirror. But as we saw, the Heat came at them with a lot of defensive intensity. And I think that mindset of not coming to a game prepared really kind of hurt the Celtics.
I wanted to piggyback off that. I agree. I feel like, honestly, we've struggled at home. It's undeniable that that's the fact. And they call it home court advantage, but I think the Boston Celtics are completely fine with being that second seed, because I think when they're at home, it's tough for them. You guys obviously see that. There's been some big games that they have lost at home, but it's just like, we'll obviously get into the lead tracker later, but like the Heat just had the momentum pretty much all game. The Boston Celtics only winning one quarter in the third quarter, 36-32. But other than that, the Heat just owned this game. It looked like one where Celtics fans just wanted to kind of look past and be like, all right, Miami Heat, they're a new look team. They're not doing so well. No Jimmy. All right, it's time to steamroll through them and look past. It's kind of you guys call it almost a trap game. With no KP, no Drew tonight, no Al. It was a tough game. You saw a lot of their bench players playing, and it was not a game where you want to look at. I thought the ball handling, not ball handling, I thought the passing looked crisp at times, but we could not buy a bucket, especially in that first quarter. Um, and we just looked lazy. We were playing lazy basketball. We were getting in a lot of foul trouble as of early in the game, and it was just a game where you could kind of tell in a sense when the Celtics are going to lose because they fall off from the get-go usually. You saw Joe Mazzulla got a tech, and you saw just from the coaching staff and the players, they were all getting frustrated. They were forcing shots, and honestly, from the get-go, it kind of essentially looked like a loss from the Boston Celtics, and that was the case. As you guys obviously see the score, it was not a pretty game. Having the subs come in with around I think it was 4 minutes left, it was just a game where as a Celtics fan, you probably, if you're not a diehard Celtics fan or like us watching the game, you turn that game off. That's one that you're not going to finish all the way through. But I think just a rough game, and especially our hopes have been so high because we're obviously on a 9-game win streak. So I feel this stings a little bit, and it should sting. I mean, this is a team that you're expected to beat, and it should sting tonight. It really should.
They just must love their continental breakfast, the Boston Celtics. They can't play without their Marriott Bonvoy points. They've been absolutely enjoying the road wins, and they come back to the Garden tonight after the historical run they went through on the West Coast trip. And it really laid a dud. The shots were coming off flat, and also when the shots aren't falling for the Celtics, something that we've been praising them on this show throughout this season for is the fact that when the shots aren't falling, they're finding other ways to score and have an impact on the game. And you just didn't see that on the defensive end either. It was tonight they were playing with the lineups a little bit and putting out Nehemiah Skata, giving Torrey Craig considerable minutes tonight, which is to be expected in these last few games, especially as we get down the road. But this Miami Heat team has a decent chance of being our round one. This could have been a round one preview for the Boston Celtics. So this is a team that you can't really play around with your food with, and they always are able to put together a good game plan. Eric Spoelstra, we've seen what he's capable of doing to the Boston Celtics in a 7-game series. He's always got a game plan, and he's always got to move her whenever the Celtics think they have him in check. And tonight was a lackluster effort from the team all around. Jason Tatum wasn't able to hit a shot during the first half of tonight's game alongside the rest of the team. And you kind of saw that switch happen during the second half. It got the game down to single digits in the third quarter, and that's when we expected this team to make that push and be able to get this game back into their control. And you saw Derek White being able to flow the ball, was moving. Everyone was getting equal opportunities, but it seemed like the team kind of lost its confidence going into the fourth quarter, and then obviously they waved the white flag with the back end of the bench in the final 5 minutes. And these are games that the Celtics should be competing in, and obviously sometimes they need to play these games conservative, being mindful of the fact that they are heading into the playoffs very soon. So you want to make sure that your team gets out of these games healthy, which is the biggest win on the court. But you just need to be able to win these games at home, especially heading into playoffs. The TD Garden hasn't been able to have the same energy that we've seen over the past few years, and during playoffs when the crowd would be off the charts, not able to even get another thought out of their head. But it kind of became to do with the expectation of this team is going to be expected to win every game, especially against Miami on their first game home after a great road trip. So this is I don't think this is something that you can really count your laurels on. I don't think this loss is too monumental for this team, but it is all about how they are going to bounce back in the next couple games.
Yeah, and Franco, in this loss tonight, of course, the Boston Celtics. I mean, you look at it, really, the Celtics. Look at this. So this is from Sean Grandy, of course, his tweet. The Celtics play 5 home games this year after long, or rather, played now after long, successful road trips. The result: 0-5 with a negative 10.6 point differential on average. And you see those 6 games right there. Sorry, 5 games right there. November 6th, a loss to Golden State after a 3-1 trip on the road. You have January 10th, a loss to Sacramento. We all remember that one. Going into the fourth quarter, tied at 76, the Celtics allow nearly 40 points to the Sacramento Kings in the fourth quarter in that game. And eventually, the Kings take home that big win for themselves. At the time, the Kings were streaking, but that was after a 4-game trip. You have that Houston loss. That was a 2-point loss. That's when Amin Thompson put in a bucket for the win. That's after a 4-game trip. And then you have the last game in which the Celtics really didn't perform well in. That's all the way back on February 6th against the Dallas Mavericks. After a 3-0 road trip, the Boston Celtics completely laid an egg in that one. Tonight they do the same. April 2nd, you see the loss to Miami after a 6-0 road trip, a historic 6-0 road trip, and the longest undefeated trip, road trip rather, the Boston Celtics have ever played. So really looking at that though tonight from the Boston Celtics, we notice the Celtics, they come back from long road trips, and Franco, you mentioned those Marriott Bonvoy points because I mean, come on, that's where the Celtics have thrived this year, is on the road in different hotels out there. And we see tonight the Celtics come back home. They drop a dud, but we've seen this be a consistent theme within the Celtics this season. And now with 6 games left, of course, we've seen a great month of March. We just saw a great month of March. Tonight was the first game in April, but we saw a 14-1 March where the Celtics just blew us away in multiple aspects of their game. However, tonight's loss was a dud. However, was it just a dud? Was it just playing towards the trend, or was tonight's loss, did it hold some concern for you guys?
Can I start it off really quick?
Go ahead, Griffin.
I don't think it's concern. I feel like this loss tonight is just kind of, all right, we've been playing at our peak recently, and I feel like this one just got the best of our emotions. It started off with Joe Mazzulla. I mean, he was frustrated from the get-go. You obviously saw that. And it's kind of like we're starting to get in the trend of, I hate to say it because I don't want to say it, but we're starting to get into the trend where you're not going to give it 100% effort. It's just how it is. We're saving our energy and our legs for playoffs. So I'm going to go as far as to say, no, this is not alarming sign. I feel like when you face this team, if we end up facing them first round in the playoffs, you'll get it done. You'll definitely get it done. The Miami Heat, they could always give the Boston Celtics some trouble, whether we like it or not. Whether they have Jimmy Butler, whether they have I don't know who, Jaime Jaquez even being their best player, like they'll still give us.
Kyle Anderson tonight. That was our biggest problem. That was the random Celtic the random opponent of the Celtics.
Yeah.
Of the night that will absolutely kill them. Anytime there's a loss, there's always just one guy who does that to us.
Oh, totally. It's those random ones. It's like Caleb Martin became a name there, Gabe Vincent. It's those random names that just become so popular because they pop off against the Boston Celtics. But ultimately, I don't see a lot of concern. I'm annoyed because look, we're 1 win away from having double figure obviously winning streak, and then we blew this one, so it definitely stings. But am I concerned? No. Is it annoying? Yes.
Yeah, to go off of Griffin, it's not necessarily concerning in my mind. You know, having Porzingis, Holiday, Horford on the bench, key pieces to our success. And I also think Joe Mazzulla was kind of experimenting with lineups, kind of seeing what would work. He went small for a lot of the game, you know. So I think that we got to understand coming to the tail end of the season that some of these games aren't necessarily going to go our way. And it just comes with the territory of finishing up a season and trying to put ourselves in the best position to be successful come playoff time.
This is a run that I wanted the Celtics to really take this rest of these final games game by game, even though they are in a concerted, comfortable area with that second seed. But with the Cleveland Cavaliers, it not being eliminated from possibility, I think it's still important for this team to go out and shoot for that number one seed and just to carry out that momentum. And I think that tonight was just the back end of incredible run for this team. And you saw a lot of the guys resting, and you have to give credit to this team. It seemed like that it wasn't too much load management on this West Coast trip. You saw a lot of these guys, Kristaps, Al Horford, all out in the out playing against these other West Coast opponents. So coming back, tonight was a good opportunity for rotational players. I wanted to see a little bit more out of players like Corey Craig, Namias Queta. I just think that they could have been able to put something together, but this Miami Heat team is, after the Jimmy Butler team, is kind of an interesting looking team. Pele Larson is a player that I haven't done too much homework on, but tonight he had 16 points. He's looking like a new upcoming good wing for the Miami Heat, and they also were missing Andrew Wiggins tonight. So this team could be an interesting matchup when it comes down to the playoffs, and if it does come down to the first round and they do end up beating, I believe, the Orlando Magic in that first round matchup of the play-in tournament, if things stand the way they are today. And I just don't really want to take much from this team because we've seen how well this team can bounce back. Next game is Friday against the Washington Wizards at home. So, or is that an away game?
That one is at home.
Yeah. So
the only two away games, it's Orlando and New York. That's it.
So yeah.
Two more.
So yeah,
it's for NBA history too.
Yeah.
For NBA history.
Yeah, they can win this game. Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, my boy coming back to TD Garden. So I just think that tonight there's not just is more to look forward to in the future. Obviously, the shooting tonight is a concern if it does end up continuing forward. They're poor shooting in the first half, but they were able to bounce back. But it kind of seemed like a very inconsistent, streaky team that was getting away from the things that have made them such a consistent winning team, which is being able to drive to the paint. Obviously, they were able to get Luke Cornett involved in the first half, and Jaylen Brown was also forcing his way to the rim through tonight's game, as he is tonight's player spotlight. So there's a few things that you can pull out of it from this game in an effort standpoint, but other than that, it's just gonna matter how this team bounces back from this loss against Miami.
Yeah, and to look at this again, I mean, for me personally, I mean, look at this. We already saw this, but I mean, the trend is there. The trend is there. And what we've been doing recently, this game tonight, I hate to say it, but I'm going to reiterate what Rob said earlier on this season, folks. I'm going to reiterate what Rob said earlier on this season against the Washington Wizards back in December when Rob, Randy, and I were on this program. You know what he said, guys? It's in the intro. This is a nothing game. This is a nothing game. I mean, from my perspective, tonight's game and tonight's result, it will have no bearing on how the Celtics perform come playoff time. Well, when the Celtics play game 1 of the NBA playoffs in the first round, nobody will be thinking about this Miami Heat game on April 2nd. Absolutely Nobody. And this was a one-off. We've seen the Celtics as of late 14-1 in the month of March. The only loss came against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who've only lost one game all season to the Eastern Conference, and that was to the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course. But outside of that, every single game the Thunder have played in the Eastern Conference, whether on the road or at home, they've beaten every single Eastern Conference team, only one loss. So to lose to the Oklahoma City Thunder at home, and that be your only loss in the entire win streak of what the Celtics had in March, including that 9-game win streak to end the month of March, which made part of the 14-1 record. If you look at that sample size for the Boston Celtics, they've been rolling. They've been rolling, and that one loss to Oklahoma City, if you're going to lose to any team, might as well be the best team in the NBA record-wise. I mean, you can't make excuses for anybody else, but to lose to the best team in the NBA record-wise, and that's not too terrible for the Boston Celtics. I know people want to overreact about the OKC matchup, but again, that even that game, it was what, a 6-point loss at the end of the night? I mean, it wasn't a substantial margin when the game was finished for Oklahoma City. Now the Boston Celtics, I mean, they throw up. Really, I'm surprised personally, and I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion on this. But are you guys actually surprised that this happened? Or sorry, this. Are you guys surprised this didn't happen sooner? That's what I was trying to get to here, because I actually do have a graphic for this. Realized this was actually up here. 15 is the largest deficit for the Celtics since their last loss in Detroit on February 26th. So all the way back in February, that was the last time the Celtics were down by at least 15 in a game. Boston is 2-7 this year when trailing by 15 plus points. Well, now, unfortunately, 2-8 after tonight's result for the Boston Celtics. But for me personally, I'm a little surprised this did not happen sooner for the Boston Celtics, considering some of the games on the schedule and some of the nights where the Celtics are just resting everybody. And Andrew, you brought it up tonight. No Kristaps Porzingis, no Al Horford, no Drew Holiday for the Boston Celtics. But that's been the case as of late for the season. They've absolutely steamrolled everybody regardless. I'm a little surprised in one of these dud of a games sooner in the Celtics schedule than what we saw tonight. Are you guys a little surprised as well?
Sorry, you go.
Sorry. I just don't think that this isn't too surprising for me. Obviously, the way that it happened is kind of surprising, but everyone's gonna see one of these bad nights shooting. You look at the team's box score; they only were able to score Actually, no one was able to score more than 2-3 pointers tonight. So when the team's shooting at that low of a clip from range and not being able to carry out these types of wins, it doesn't really knock my confidence in this team. But when it comes down to seeing this happen at this point of the season, I'm happy it didn't happen sooner because now they're just being able to get it out of the way. So hopefully, like we said earlier, this is a nothing game. You had Al Horford repping the Franco 47 brand apparel. You guys need to get back to our sponsorship.
Wait. Do we want to get to this right now, Franco? Do we want to get to this right now? Hold up. You just mentioned Al Horford tonight in his fit. You just mentioned Al Horford in his fit tonight. I mean, let's bring this up. Al Horford, he was wearing the Franco sweatshirt tonight. I mean, the patented white Franco sweatshirt. Straight up. And Franco, I don't know if you knew this, but you wear sweatshirts on Postgame quite frequently. I mean, we see it right here. Right here. Look at this.
Whoa, wow. This is actually, wow, I was not expecting all this.
Look at this. Look. First of all, look at it. I mean, to be fair, 3 of these are the same, not the same photo, but the same sweatshirt. But that sweatshirt look, I'm telling you, Franco, it had me. I saw Al Horford on the bench tonight, and I was going, Al Horford, he straight up took that out of Franco's closet. That's a Franco sweatshirt right there. That's a Franco sweatshirt.
Only if I could look that handsome.
You got to get the kicks too. I mean, look, he's sitting next to.
you guys
G League
haven't seen
MVP
my
JD
basketball
Davison.
shoes
Yes,
yet.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yep, we're gonna end up talking about that tonight because we got our crew, Celtics Nation Rise. If you haven't checked out their page since the collaboration, please do, because they just knocked out a great interview with Jordan Walsh, and they also have done a few great interviews with other players in recent history. But yeah, you had you have this team getting rested up for the playoffs. So, like I said, this is a game that you can take notes on when it gets down to that week off for the Celtics, not for the Miami Heat. The Celtics can be sitting in that locker room able to watch film on this game, seeing what they did wrong, because there's a lot that they can pull out of this game, especially on the defensive end. A lot of getting burnt on open looks, also just not really sliding on the defensive end. You didn't see that. It kind of seemed like they were stuck in place for a couple of possessions, allowing these open shots for Miami, because Miami wasn't playing their best game either. They were also getting frustrated. It seemed like both teams kind of were playing with the chip on their shoulder tonight. You saw the refs were letting a few things play out, and there were a few questionable calls as well, a few technicals handed out. So when you see both sides of the court going back and forth about officiating, that's when you know neither team's having a good night, because I just think that it's just more the game than anything else. That you don't have to worry about what they're calling, what the refs are doing in that sense. So I just don't think this is like when you say seeing this sooner, I think that we did see this at one point this winter in January and February, and hopefully that is not the signs of what's to come. But tonight didn't really even have the same feeling that those games in January and February did, because you could just see that it was just a lack of energy from this team rather than just miscues, which we saw earlier.
I just want to say, Franco, thank you for the beautiful shout out right there. Yeah, it's been great working with Celtics Talk Weekly. Andrew and I, yeah, we went to the Expo last night for some playoff action. Got to get that interview with Jordan Walsh. Super quiet guy, by the way, right, Andrew?
Definitely quiet, yeah. But I did like one of his answers. It was probably the second question when he started talking about how you just liked having like that expectation.
Yes, that was cut off. You can't even hear it.
You know, and it's cool to see that we have such a strong culture and people really like to grasp onto it. So it's cool.
Oh, totally. But I gotta say this too. Speaking of Celtics Nation Rise, episode 32 today. My prediction was so we do a series prediction. If you guys don't know, like we'll have a podcast predict what we think for the upcoming week and guess on that. I said 4-0, but I also said this. I said if the Celtics drop a game, it's gonna be tonight. I said it. You guys go watch it. Hear it. It's at the end. I said if they drop a game, it's going to be tonight. The reason I thought it was going to be tonight is, for one, it's the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat always give you trouble. It's just how it is. No matter who they have on the team, it's the Heat. They always are annoyance. They're like that mosquito for the Celtics. They never go away, and you're like, shoot. And that's the Miami Heat. But also, it's just the fact that this honestly felt like a trap game. I mean, you said it, Seamus. Yeah, we've had some players out and we've been able to win games without players. But I feel in the same sense tonight, you could just tell the energy wasn't there. I feel like it starts with the crowd, though, too. I feel like usually at a Celtics game, no matter who we're playing, you could hear the crowd. I didn't hear the crowd much tonight. I'm going to be honest. It was pretty dead in the Garden tonight. I'm just saying. So I think it starts off with that. I think then you saw, obviously, the team getting frustrated with plays and stuff like that. So it just honestly fell. And obviously, they were forcing a lot of shots. And just really, I sound like a mockingbird because I've said it all night tonight. But it's been rough. But go check that out, though. I said it. I said I thought 4-0, but if they're gonna lose one, it would be tonight, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, to talk about the Celtic, like the energy in the arena to be honest, I think the Celtics had a couple times where they did hit some big shots, forced Bolster to call timeout, and we kind of had that momentum going. But then the Celtics would come back out and they'd take a tough shot with little ball movement. They wouldn't get a lot of energy in the ball, and it's that taking those bad shots kind of killed the momentum for the team, you know? So like we talk about all the time, our game plan for shooting a lot of threes and just out shooting the other team, we're not going to go away from it. And I think it's such an important thing to stick to. But it's really about the quality of shots we're getting and making sure that we have kickouts for threes. We move the ball. We wait a little longer in the shot clock to get good threes, you know? So that kills momentum sometimes when you take a bad shot, and it allows transition baskets for the Heat and just easier baskets for Miami to pick up.
Now, why do you guys think that was? Well, actually, specifically for you, Andrew, why do you think that was tonight for the Boston Celtics? Obviously, we saw everything you just said out there on the floor, but in this particular spot in their schedule, what exactly would bring that to the Boston Celtics club right now?
Yeah, I feel like, I kind of touched upon it previously, but you have those 6 straight wins under your belt and you come home and you kind of feel like you're invincible. You know, you kind of have this prideful feeling like, oh, we're going to come in, we're going to hit all of our shots. We're going to pick up momentum early and we're just going to run with it. But you can't underestimate this Miami Heat team. I mean, they were coming off 5 straight wins, right? Tyler Hero's really, really playing well. I wrote about he's averaging like 28 or something in the last 5 games. So you just can't underestimate your other opponent. And sometimes, like we said, it's a trap game and you fall into that. And so when you start shooting those bad shots and just not really taking your time on the offensive end, it just kills your momentum and doesn't allow you to really, get the best out of your team. But to be honest, also, Miami was doing a very good job at contesting shots throughout the entire game. They gave the Celtics a very tough time behind the arc. And I think that could be a recipe for other teams too, really running them off the arc, making them play in the paint and get those points in the paint rather than shooting behind the arc. And it would seem that Spoelstra kind of implement that in his game plan.
Yeah, and tonight we see that in the lead tracker play out at the end of the night. Yikes. This is definitely not the sea of green we want to see. A 22-point lead, the biggest of the night for the Miami Heat coming after halftime. We see that run by the Boston Celtics in the third quarter there, but it's really stymied. I mean, this goes, you really look at the entire lead tracker here, it goes completely away from what the Boston Celtics have done well as of late, which is close out quarters. And tonight, that was the exact opposite. I mean, really looking at where the Celtics closed out the quarters tonight, you see that it's particularly the last 2 quarters, the third quarter and the fourth quarter. That end of the third quarter there, the Boston Celtics let go of the rope once again. It felt like at one point, oh, here come the Celtics, cut it to 4, and then eventually it was up to 10 again by the end of the third quarter. And it felt like at that point in time, the Celtics were definitely chipping away from a bigger lead than it seemed when it was. I mean, surely it was when it was at 4 points. I mean, looking at that, the Boston Celtics lost a little bit of their momentum, and then in the fourth quarter, it just completely got away from themselves. And let's talk about this too. I mean, the start of the second half, I was going to say second quarter, but the third quarter, you see there the Miami Heat run to uptick that lead to 22 after halftime. I mean, that's right there on the lead tracker, something we have not seen in a while. The Celtics just completely starting a quarter poorly, and then really ending it poorly as well. I mean, they came back in that third quarter, again, cut it to 4, but then just couldn't quite get it going near the end of the third quarter. And then Miami just put it back up, and eventually they ran away with it as the fourth quarter progressed on. But looking at that lead tracker tonight, we see a theme within it that we have not seen out of the Boston Celtics too often recently. I mean, really not at all. Most lead trackers include some level of the sea of green. in there somewhere. Sometimes it could be a game in which we saw against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which seems now forever ago. That sea of green came at the beginning of the game. However, it was chipped away by the Cavs until the end of the game. But really, most of the occasions we've seen the Celtics play in, that sea of green's been there. However, tonight just did not see it whatsoever. And you see the 3-pointers tonight. The Celtics, they were putrid shooting the 3-point ball. Absolutely putrid. I mean, when it was when no matter what point of the game we were at, the Celtics were not shooting the ball well. It never felt like the Celtics really ever got it going. I mean, of course, that third quarter there, the Celtics were able to surmount a little bit of a run, but it was quickly stymied by the Miami Heat, and the Celtics went back to cold shooting. But that brings me to the point of, is the Celtics shooting, how much does that actually dictate their level of play within a game like this? We think about the Celtics shooting. Sometimes it doesn't always correlate to the entirety of their game. I mean, sometimes we see it's more of the energy, it's the effort defensively, specifically on the defensive end of the floor. It's the effort on that end. It's the physicality. Are the Celtics making the other team feel themselves? Sometimes we see that correlate. But for you guys tonight, was it more of the shooting aspect, the poor shooting aspect, or was it simply the effort out of the Boston Celtics?
It was the effort. I feel like shooting, yeah, you go with that, but I think it was just the effort. I feel like you saw it from that lead tracker. The Boston Celtics were not there tonight. It was lack of effort. I feel like you put your bench players in. I thought Luke Cornett getting it started early. He looked great, and I thought it was going to be a good game for the Boston Celtics. However, it was just lack of effort. I mean, and it was just getting in their heads. I think they couldn't stay out of their own heads. And you talk about that lead tracker, and they cut it down to 4, right? And it was just like they gave up with their effort and they let their foot off that gas pedal. And it's like, why did we even come back to 4 points if we were just going to blow it? So I feel it was just honestly lack of effort. It's the fact that, and it's not a bad thing. I would rather have them throw this Miami Heat game away rather than go into playoffs and start lacking effort. I would rather have it be now, because you already mentioned it, Seamus. We haven't seen much of load management on the West Coast trip. So now you're going to start seeing it more, and you're going to start seeing, I hate to say it, but you're not going to see complete effort for the Boston Celtics, as they're going to try to have that effort come into playoffs. I might be completely wrong. Next game, they might come out and blow the team out by 30, but I just feel tonight it was not working. They were worked up in their heads. It was lack of effort. And you saw that was a bloodbath. That wasn't a sea of green. That was a complete bloodbath, because the Boston Celtics got massacred tonight. It's how it was. I mean, you look at that third quarter, that was the only quarter we outscored the Miami Heat 36-32. And that quarter, you could be like, all right, we're finally doing good. We're finally hitting shots. We look like a good team. Jaylen Brown was hitting shots. We looked a lot better. We looked a lot more offensively synced. We looked like a better team. However, instead of letting that kind of energy and momentum fast forward into the fourth, we let it go. I mean, we only scored 22 points in the fourth quarter, and the Miami Heat had 33 points. You can't let that happen. That's how, that's letting your foot off the gas pedal. That's what I've been talking about bad habits, is instead of keeping their foot on the gas pedal, when you cut it to 4 points and you had that big third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, keeping that foot on the gas pedal, which we don't see the Boston Celtics. The third quarter usually kills the Boston Celtics. However, they were doing good in the third quarter. Instead of having that translate over to the fourth quarter, they were like, all right, let's have the night off. Let's go back on the road. Let's go to our Hilton hotels. Let's go, have some our luxurious food. That's kind of where they were. They were like,
I'm gonna tell folks right now, just don't go to the Super 8s. Just don't go to the Super 8s. All right, I'm gonna give them an anti-promotion right now. Don't go to the Super 8s. Don't go. Just don't go, folks. Don't go.
Don't go.
I'll take any chance to bash a Super 8. I will.
Yeah,
I will. They turned me down in Pittsburgh. I mean,
Oh,
it's
geez.
for real.
Yeah, you need those the eggs that are coming out of that bin. You need the bagels that have been sitting in those containers. You need that cereal that comes out of the little dispensing machines. That's all the Celtics need to win. Just put those
Fairfield.
in TD Garden. Yeah.
Fairfield Inn and Suites. Oh yeah.
You know what they should do? You know what actually might make the Boston Celtics win at home? Have them stay in hotels. I mean, it works. I mean, tell them, be like, hey, look, we're going on an extra long road trip, boys. Or let's give them an in-season tournament court. Let's just turn the court into like the finals court for the in-season tournament and have them stay in hotels. And hey, we might get a home win. I'm sorry. No, I love the Celtics. I think it's just honestly tonight it wasn't anything special. But with that being said, I gotta run, you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys later.
Peace, Griffin.
Yeah, Griffin.
Peace.
Well,
All right. And now we are three. We are
Yep.
three.
down to 3.
Yeah,
So
to go off like Griffin said, I think no matter what, when it comes down to it, I mean, when you shoot 27.9% from the behind the line, it's just not going to go your way. It's a tough way to. It's just not going to go your way. Another stat that kind of stands out to me tonight. We didn't go as deep tonight on the bench, but I mean, we only had 27 points compared to the Heat's 45, and a lot of times our depth kind of shines and allows us to get wins, and we just didn't have the production as much from guys like say Pritchard or Shireman kind of helping us out. So we definitely could have used that. And then also I do agree with Griffin that there was a couple of times where the ball would be at the Celtics' feet and they're not diving on it or they're not showing effort to go get those balls. And when it comes down to it, those are the things that you need to do to win games. So you can do everything you want. You can shoot the ball, lights out. But if you don't have that little extra grit, that little extra toughness to kind of let you win out these games, you're just not going to be successful.
Looking at like that stat tracker or lead tracker tonight, I just am starting to notice the it was really. I'm trying to find any other way to look at tonight's loss as I think tonight was a planned, like a very strategic win by the Miami Heat. They have a very after the trade of the Jimmy Butler, their roster is looking pretty filled right now. I'm shocked that Yamiaka has only got 2 minutes tonight, and they played 12 players in tonight's win, and most got some considerable minutes compared to what they've seen before. But the Celtics were kind of like we've been seeing. They're starting to experiment more. Pritchard was able to find the light tonight. He wasn't able to score as well. Have been waiting on the Baylor Shireman performances that we were able to see earlier on this season, or not earlier on this season, but in the past during the West Coast trip, he was able to put together a few good games. But I kind of, other than the lack of scoring from Torrey Craig, I think that he can find himself a solidified role in this team, especially during playoff time as a two-way player. Obviously, was struggling in the plus minus, but I don't think there was a Celtic who wasn't. But with Sam Hauser, it's really concerning for me if he is going to be this team's eighth option heading into playoffs. Obviously, we'll place Pritchard and Horford above him amongst the starting five, and him only being able to contribute 6 points as a starter. Obviously, last night or last game, Xavier Tillman got the start. Didn't contribute as much as people were expecting, but that's what you're gonna get is a lot of jigsaw pieces getting mismatched together right now, just trying to see whatever flows they can get, have that next man up mentality, and whatever it takes to conserve this team. But if this team, the last thing you would want to see is Jaylen Brown going for a loose ball in Game 76 of the regular season and rolling an ankle or something of that sort because of it being a close game. I think there were a couple of markers at this point where this team could have still had this in play. Obviously, in the third quarter, you felt the momentum get built by this team being able to get a few 3-point shots to fall. The Miami Heat took it. The Celtics were able to take advantage of the Miami Heat poor shooting out of halftime and were able to cut it to a close margin. You had Jaylen Brown talking to Eric Spoelstra, telling him to call a timeout. He thought that energy came back, and then my rule of thumb was I thought the Celtics would have been in this game through until a final buzzer if they were able to walk out of that fourth quarter with the game being in single digits, but it just seemed like there were too many weird plays during the end of that run when the Celtics were starting to get that momentum. The ball got called back during the third quarter when they were taking their final attempt to make it a single digit lead. And it kind of just seemed like the team started to wave that white flag when the fourth quarter came around, obviously keeping Tatum out on the court and Jaylen Brown trying to create any momentum they could. But when it came down to those final 5 minutes, and if this was game 40 of the season, I would expect those guys to be out on the court. But these guys should be really taking these as reps in preparation for what's to come in round one.
Not to derail the conversation completely, but Franco, the last time the Celtics had a loss like this, your camera could not stay up. Worth the shit. I mean, like, seriously, it was. I first of all, let's applaud Franco's camera stand, the comeback, the suction cup.
Do you
suction
know?
cup. I mean, we haven't seen a problem. We haven't seen a fall in 2 months.
It is 2 pieces of duct tape on the back of my laptop.
I mean, that is the ultimate advertisement for duct tape. I mean, come on, that's where you can literally fix anything with duct tape. No, I say that because tonight my camera stand. Obviously, I'm on the road here. My camera stand tonight is a little. I don't know if you guys could tell. It's a little wonky. It's like geez, not all the way there. And while I'm messing with it, I'm going, this is. I mean, look, the last time we had a loss like this, Franco's camera couldn't stay up, and now it happens again. It's like the deja vu. It's deja vu. We just move people. It's like my camera can't stay up now, and the teams too. It's not the Mavericks. It's the Miami Heat tonight. But tonight's game, I mean, really, I mean, it correlates. I'm just saying, when we have bad losses, I mean, we're gonna have camera problems.
Hey, that's follow the Celtics as much as you guys do, as much as we do. You know, you start to kind of become like them a little. You know, I mean, you pick up their habit.
Oh yeah. I mean, I 1000% agree with that because, I mean, there was a point in the season, I feel like back in January, where the Celtics are going back and forth, and our view count. I mean, we're not directly related to the view count in terms of how we're performing on a show, but I mean, my goodness. It would be up and down, up and down, up and down. And then there was a point where we're just rolling. I mean, that's how it goes. But I would say, I mean, media, I've always thought media and just life in general, very, very closely related with the game of basketball and sports in general. It's like you can mine so many concepts out of basketball and relate them to real life. It's like, oh, I see this arise in real life. I see this arise in basketball as well. It's like this show. I mean, literally, this is game 75. We've done over 70 of these shows this year. And it's like, show number 1 of the season, definitely not going to go as well as show number 70 or 75
That,
or whatever. And not every show is going to go, of course, the same. But
yeah, gonna
to
have days where you just don't necessarily show up, or you just don't find your rhythm. And what do? They move on. They fall back to what they know what they're capable of, and they fall back to what they've built themselves on, and they just go back and attack it again. And I think that you got to have faith in the Celtics, and you can't hold this game to much, because the Celtics
exactly.
have
We got
proven to us that they can bounce back and figure it out.
I mean, yeah, we got to let the public know about that. I mean, I feel like a game like tonight, quite frankly, I feel like there are two crowds when it comes to this game. I mean, there's two crowds when it comes to every game, but this game is either nobody's paying attention, nobody cares, or we have people who are on catastrophe cliff right now. I mean, literally, I mean, I can see both. Now, the people on catastrophe cliff, I'm going to try to walk y'all down here because look at the Celtics record as of late. To me, the sample size is evident. I know some people might see the Celtics performance in January, late December out there, that 500 stretch. They see it as concerning. There's still some questions around the Celtics team regarding their effort at certain points in time because I won't deny it. I mean, during the 14-1 March, there were games in there where the Celtics, they didn't look great all game. I mean, the last game against the Miami Heat, the Heat was a little back and forth. It was a little back and forth. The two games against the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, one of those games, the Brooklyn Nets actually held the lead for the majority of the game. The other game was the Nets. They came back. We've seen that theme arise in the Celtics during this last stretch where they'll give great. I mean, in terms of the timing, it's always great. The Celtics give that great effort, but then there are moments where they just kind of allow another team to get up on their heels in a game where we think, oh, this should be a blowout for the Boston Celtics. And some of them end up being a blowout for the Celtics in the end. When you think about the Utah Jazz, that's a perfect example here. The Utah Jazz game, I believe that was the one back at the Garden, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, that was the one actually in Utah. My bad. The one in Utah, the Celtics, they surmount a big lead early, and it's a double-digit lead. The Utah Jazz come back, cut it to 2 in the third quarter, yet the Celtics, when the night is all said and done, they win the game by 22. So there are nights like that where the Celtics still come out with those big wins. However, in the midst of it, they allow another team to come back, usually a lesser team, to come back on themselves. So there are some of those effort questions that really, I don't even want to say effort questions, but they're more consistency questions with the Boston Celtics as we've seen this season. But for the people out there who still have that in their mind when it comes to the Boston Celtics, there are too many good things surrounding this Boston Celtics club as of late to allow game, one game to dictate the thought of where this team is currently. But that kind of brings me here to the next segment we're going to get into, and it's going to be the outlook of the next 6 games. Now, we of course are talking about
Road to
the
60.
Celtics coming back. Exactly, Franco. The road to 60, 63 off the table. Unfortunately, 63 now off the table. 62, Franco. 62. How are you feeling about your 62 right now? By the way,
I'm
6
feeling.
games left.
I'm
6
very
games.
feel. Phoenix at home. No Kevin Durant. That should be a win. I don't feel any trapness to that, especially with the team getting a little bit of rest alongside that. So I'm expecting this team to walk into that game fully healthy. I'm expecting a win there. Washington, and then obviously you know how much I love my New Yorkers.
The king of New York. You got to love your constituents. Of
Yeah.
course. Of
Or
course.
and Orlando, and so that's where I'm kind of a little bit concerned. Is we've seen this team kind of. These are games that kind of have a little, not in a logistical sense, levity on them, but these are teams that are competitive against the Celtics and will really take a win against the Celtics anytime they can take one. And you look at Miami and Oklahoma City and Cleveland are the past 3 losses to the Boston Celtics. So I don't think this is a team that isn't playing up to the level of their competitors. So I want to see them be able to win these games with a controllable margin. I would rather see some trap game losses than some losses to these teams that are going to be almost probably in the foreseeable future for the Celtics. When you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, probably as the favorite to end up running into the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the odds-are favorites to run into the Celtics in the NBA Finals. And then you also look at the Miami Heat. That's a team that's going to want to sneak their way into round one, maybe against the Celtics and possibly against the Cavaliers, or they get eliminated. Who knows what goes on in the play-in? Very unpredictable week of basketball there. But these are games that the Celtics should be arriving for. Obviously, at this point in the season, there's not much to be playing for in a record standings wise, other than the potential of Cleveland slipping up. But after tonight's loss, I kind of throw that out the window unless Cleveland really lays a dud in the final 5 games of their season, 5 or 6 games of the season. And
You'd
the
have to see like
Celtics
a
win.
Cleveland
Yeah.
5-game losing streak plus a 5-game Celtics winning streak, pretty
Yeah.
much.
So, yeah, I think that I would feel confident in saying that the 2 spot is cemented at this point. So not really much to play for, but you got to look across the court and see who you're playing against and see what type of intensity they are walking onto your court with. Because if you see these guys and you see them warming up, being energetic, getting fired up, playing physical defense enough that it gets your coach animated enough to get a technical and get your team in danger of getting him thrown out, and Jason Tatum also having a couple of frustration fouls in the beginning of tonight's game. That's not a good look for this team, and it kind of shows that the Boston Celtics are human after all. Even the Miami Heat can make the Celtics bleed. It's gonna be, obviously, I don't expect the Celtics not to walk out of that series, but if the Miami Heat bring the intensity they did tonight, and also the Celtics play with the same energy they played tonight, this could end up being a 6-game series, and it's 2 or 3
Whoa
extra
now.
games that the Celtics don't need
Whoa
to be
now,
playing.
Franco. Whoa. 6-game series against the Heat. I'm going to go out and say this right now. If we play a 6-game series against the Heat in round 1, we're not winning the finals.
I'm just saying, hey, what did I say before? With the intensity that the Heat played with tonight, and if the Celtics showed up to the playoffs with this energy, obviously they won't. Obviously, they won't be resting players, but this is just a little bit of my a few months back PTSD kicking in with the Celtics.
A few months ago, the Heat, the Hawks, the Magic,
yeah, any of them
wouldn't have wanted to see any of those teams.
Right. So I just want to see this team really get those wins that are more meaningful. And if you looked at the rest of the schedule, this is probably the most meaningful game, other than the New York game, which if New York ends up walking out with a win, it doesn't mean anything for the standings wise. But when round 2 rolls around, guess who knows they beat the Celtics a month back? The New York Knicks.
I was just going to say that. I think we got Phoenix, Washington, and then the 2 Charlotte games. Yeah, maybe not as important, but that New York and Orlando game, those are possible teams that you may see in the following rounds. And even Miami, you might even see them in the first round, right? So for Miami to say the last time we played you, we beat you, that's important for them, and that could give them the confidence to come in and win a game and steal a game early on, then applying more pressure on the Celtics and possibly forcing a longer series than we want, and then that trickles into the next round where maybe we lose to a New York and now we're facing New York again, and they just beat us. So yes, it's the end of the season, and yes, you want to rest your guys, but momentum is important, and I know Joe Mazzulla in his mind, he's a sicko, and it's part of his DNA. He wants to have one up on all these teams. So as a Celtics fan, you should want the same, So it's kind of my mindset of it.
And 100%, Andrew, for the viewers out there who don't know, you actually play college basketball at
Yeah.
SMCC, Southern Maine, of course. Now, you look at these last 6 games for the Boston Celtics from a player's perspective, right? From a competitiveness perspective. How are you approaching these last 6 games if you were on the Boston Celtics personally, coming from a player?
Depends on who he's playing as, probably.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
Tatum or the Kata.
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, assume you're a starter, right, on this
Sure.
Boston Celtics club, right?
Yeah.
And you were to approach these last 6 games of the season.
From a personal perspective, you want to win you want to go out and win all the rest of these games and just steamroll teams and just have that momentum and just be able to say, like, going into playoffs, yeah, we're primed and ready. We're ready to go. We're ready to take on anyone and just give them our best shot. And like against New York and Orlando, you don't want to have to go to their away gym, to their away court, knowing that knowing you lost a game, or knowing that they have a chance. You don't want to give any team hope. And I know personally, when I was playing this past season, we ended up unfortunately losing to a team. We played a team at home, and we ended up losing to them, and that actually impacted us. And we ended up playing them in their away gym, and the gym sucked. It's not an idea.
You got to name the school right now. You got to call it the school.
Not my favorite gym. Great coach over there, Jamal. He's the best. I think we talked about another podcast. They had Jalen Calvin, 2-time MVP of the USA, talented player. And but it works to their benefit. You know what I mean? It's almost like the old Garden, where it's just not a good gym. You're not your favorite gym to go to. Court slippery. Like, it's just not ideal. But you go over there and you're like, damn, I don't want to play these guys. So you want everything in your favor, because no matter what happens, any little edge you can gain coming into playoffs is important. And for the Celtics to come out on top and really dominate this final stretch, I think it'd be really important for them, and just show that they can beat teams like New York and Orlando convincingly, giving them self-confidence that they're prepared and ready to go.
And in these situations, obviously, near the end of the season, things can get a little wonky when it comes to the game plan and who's resting and who's not. And as we've seen as of late, the Boston Celtics have done that with a couple of players, whether it's Jason Tatum. He injured his ankle, but before the injured ankle, he did sit out a couple of games there. Uncharacteristically so for Jason Tatum. He's one of the more durable players in the entire NBA, just never likes to sit out games whatsoever. But tonight, of course, we saw no Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday, no Al Horford there tonight. I mean, that's 3 of the really top 7 rotation players. That's nearly half of the Celtics rotation out tonight. And these games tend to get a little wonky. Well, another player that was out in this recent stretch that we've seen in and out of the lineup, maybe there are some concerns for this player when it comes to his knee, maybe some injuries. But tonight, I don't think there was really that much of a concern for Mr. Jaylen Brown, our player spotlight. 24 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists on the night, 10 of 20 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3. Not the most efficient game for Jaylen Brown, and not the most, I shouldn't say efficient. I mean, 10 of 20, 50%, that's all right. From 3, you'd like to see maybe one more 3 make there. However, Jaylen Brown, what I should say is not too gaudy of numbers tonight for Jaylen Brown. Just a nice little 24, 9, and 4 game for JB. But he does walk away with player spotlight. And I will say, despite the loss here tonight, I believe the player spotlight was important for Jaylen Brown to come out and grab in this instance because of two reasons. Number one, already mentioned it, he's been in and out of the lineup. Maybe there have been concerns with him and his knee as of late. We don't know if that's just an excuse or if the Celtics are actually monitoring that or if he's monitoring that. And the other reason was Jason Tatum. He didn't play particularly well tonight. This was really the first bad Jason Tatum game we've seen in quite some time. I mean, Jason Tatum, he only scored 16 points tonight, and his shooting line was even more atrocious. 4 of 17 for Jason Tatum, 2 of 9 from the floor. So on a night where Jason Tatum wasn't exactly hitting his mark, Jaylen Brown, he needed to step up just a little bit. Obviously, it didn't result in a win for the Boston Celtics, but in that instance, you do want to see if one J is not on, you want to see the other J kind of light it up. We've seen more of Jaylen Brown on the other side of this, where Jaylen Brown might not have the most efficient game, and usually Tatum is putting up those MVP caliber games. Tonight, again, not the most audacious game from Jaylen Brown. However, he did come out, played well, and of course, came out with a new look tonight. Jaylen Brown did cut off all his hair for the season, of course, and kind of has a different look out there. I'd said, he looks like 19 through 21 Jaylen Brown. I mean, that era of Jaylen Brown where he came in with the flat top, then he went bald, and then he kind of started growing it back during the 22 season, and then from there we kind of saw it progress into, he had the cornrows, and I don't remember what other hairstyles he had. I know he had a couple during the portion in which the Celtics competed last year and then this year, of course. But regardless of Jaylen Brown's hair, he had a great game tonight on the floor in an unfortunate event for the Boston Celtics and a loss. However, JB, again, as I mentioned, important for him to come out and play well in this instance. But starting with you, Franco, what did you see out of Jaylen Brown? What did you like out of his performance tonight?
When Jason Tatum isn't able to make these types of shots, this is usually when Jaylen Brown steps up and is that energy type of player. During the third quarter of tonight's game, you could see him playing with that energy. There were some plays that were kind of questionable decisions that he made, but he was able to attack the rim, being able to score a few times and also picking up on the defensive end when other players aren't. I feel like I need to take this opportunity with this platform to remind everyone that Jaylen Brown is an Eastern Conference Finals MVP and a NBA Finals MVP. If people have talked about Jason Tatum going under the radar this season on the national standard, look at Jaylen Brown. He's really kind of plummeted to not really even much conversation is coming about him, and it kind of seems like he's been kind of turned into Jason Tatum and the star-studded starting lineup instead of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the star-studded starting lineup. And a lot of conversations you'll hear from the general. And I think that this is a good game for him to step up, and obviously the team wasn't able to contribute as well as they have been in the past, and Jalen's kind of been that spark plug for them that they've been able to rely on. And tonight he brought it into a close game, and what I really liked was with when we were going into that final 5 minutes of the third, when he told Spoelstra to call a timeout, and Spoelstra called a timeout. I thought that was like, all right, this team is done playing with their food. They're about to come back and make this an interesting game for the rest of this run. And it really just fell apart from there. It kind of felt like all it took was one or two shots for Miami, one or two good plays to have the Celtics feel like they're defeated again. And it kind of is an emphasis on how this team has been on runs throughout this year. They're very run and momentum dependent. You haven't seen them be able to make those stark stops of another team's momentum out of nowhere, nor just be able to spark their own from just the dirt. It usually has to come along with game plan and schematics, and unfortunately, no one gained the hot hand from three. But the fact that Jaylen Brown was able to help coordinate this win and bring it within a close game in the third quarter is why he's tonight's player spotlight.
Yeah, and Andrew, what did you think of Jaylen Brown's performance tonight?
Yeah, I feel like he was a bright spot in today. I think bringing in 9 rebounds, I like that. So that shows energy. 24 points, maybe not his most efficient night from beyond the arc, but his ability to drive and get in the paint and be aggressive, I think that's very important, and it just shows the guys around him too. It kind of sparks that energy and sparks that and gives them that, or shows them that they too need to drive to the paint. You know what I mean? And I think he led by example tonight, so it's good to see. And it's also good to see just him struggling with that knee and him able to bounce back pretty quick and show us that he's still a key contributor to this team and that we should not underappreciate him at all. And we should continue to call him the Jays rather than just, Tatum's team and all that. So,
right. I think people forget out there how valuable Jaylen Brown really is to this Boston Celtics ball club. And Franco, you started with it. Let's remind people Jaylen Brown is the 2024 NBA Finals MVP. And folks, it is 2025. Not that long ago, Jaylen Brown was Finals MVP. Less than a year ago, actually. And really in that finals series, and let's bring this up too, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So ECF MVP and Finals MVP for Jaylen Brown. Now, were his numbers off the charts in those series? No. However, what those awards show is he was actually the Celtics' best player in those two series, the Eastern Conference Finals and the Finals, the two biggest moments, the two biggest series of the season last year, the championship winning season for the Boston Celtics. And Jaylen Brown now feels like he's overlooked. I mean, really, Franco, when's the last time we've talked about Jaylen Brown on postgame extensively? Extensively. Was it about his knee a couple games ago, maybe? But before that, it's like we're not talking about him in a positive light in terms of his performances. I mean, we haven't. I don't want to say Jaylen Brown hasn't played well, but it's not as if we're coming in here every night and praising Jaylen Brown the way we do with Derek White, per se, the way we do, of course, with Jason Tatum. And Jason Tatum is a player who this season he's solidified himself as. I mean, at least a top 5 NBA player. Could he be a top 3 NBA player? This season, Jason Tatum is a top 3 NBA player, but that's where Jason Tatum is within his game. And because of that, because of Jason Tatum taking over the MVP reins for the Boston Celtics, playing as well as he is right now and has this season, feels like Jaylen Brown has been a little bit overlooked on this Boston Celtics club as a truly important member, because we like to, what we do here in Celtics Nation is we group the Jays together and go, well, those are our 2 superstars at the top. They're the pillars. They're the guys who are always going to be here. I mean, they're making max money and whatnot, and those are players in which you never have to really worry about unless they're injured or truly slumping. And after that, there's all the other guys. Right, it's Drew Holiday, it's Derek White, it's Kristaps Porzingis, it's everybody off the bench, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, and Sam Hauser, Baylor Shireman, even as we're getting into the point where he is carving himself out a playoff rotation, potentially a spot in the rotation, potentially. But we talk about all these other players helping the Jays out, but we never quite center in on Jaylen Brown because we're always talking about Jason Tatum. And out of the 2 Jays, the conversation is always focused on what JT is doing and never really what JB is doing out there. However, on the basketball floor, Jaylen Brown, he'll have stretches where he is the Celtics' best player. Now, more often than not, that's been Tatum this season. But I thought we saw in that third quarter, I thought we were going to see Brown and Tatum lead the Celtics back all the way to the point where they had to lead. We did not see that. I feel like I kind of jinxed it tonight, Franco. I mean, I sent in the group chat, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be so great if we just completed this comeback and we had this on our resume at this point? It's like Celtics haven't had to play like this in a long time. They haven't had to see a deficit in a long time. And yet tonight they see a deficit. I'm going, oh, wouldn't it be a great opportunity for the Celtics to come back in the scenario, a scenario they might actually see during the playoffs? And it felt like the minute I sent that text, it was like, the Celtics run, it's over. The Miami Heat are coming back. And I should say, the Miami Heat didn't need to come back, but they just kept putting it on the Boston Celtics after that. And the game was over. But we see in tonight's scenario, I was talking about Jaylen Brown specifically, is Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. It felt like they were going to take over that game in the third quarter, but really the player who was taking over, I don't want to say, I mean, the majority of the points there in that third quarter, or really that run, I mean, it was Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was going downhill, going towards the rim, being super aggressive, and that's really one of his biggest traits within the Celtics. I mean, first of all, I mean, some people out there, they're going to get mad at this conversation, but I'm going to say it anyway, is Jaylen Brown, he looks like an action figure right now. He just looks like an absolute action figure. Jaylen Brown, 100%, the way he's built at this current moment in time, he might be one of the more physical players in all of the NBA. All of the NBA. Jaylen Brown, the way he is built, I 100% do not argue against him being one of the more physical players in all of the NBA. You don't see out there on the landscape of the NBA players looking like Jaylen Brown. He looks like an action figure right now, the way his muscles are literally popping from his from I mean, on court. I mean, on the camera. I mean, literally, you see it out there. You see it out there every single night. Jaylen Brown, he came into the season completely in shape, but now he's still at that level. I mean, 70 games into 70 games of cardio, Jaylen Brown is still at that level. But here's what I'm saying in regard to Jaylen Brown when it comes to that is looking at Jaylen Brown and the way he's built, his physicality. He is one of the best players at setting the tone at the Celtics going downhill, going towards the rim, using that physicality to his advantage and the team's advantage when the team needs a bucket. Because there were plenty of times tonight where the Celtics needed a bucket, 100%. And of course, it didn't result in a win at the end, but it felt like Jaylen Brown did have those timely moments where he was scoring those buckets, going downhill towards the rim, being physical with the Miami Heat, and really just imposing his entire body against the Heat. It's really up to this point in time. Jaylen Brown, he came into the league. I mean, he was a scrawny 6'6" forward who stood in the corner, and now he's somebody who can handle the basketball and get you a bucket, whether it's from the 3-point arc or going straight downhill towards the rim against, I mean, centers, bigger forwards. I mean, he can really be physical with anybody. He's not going to be the tallest player, the most lengthy player out there. But again, Jaylen Brown, I believe he's one of the more physical players in all of the NBA right now, just by the way he's built. And from that perspective, I thought Jaylen Brown was phenomenal tonight in really getting the buckets that the Celtics needed at certain moments in time to actually give themselves a chance in this game. Of course, it was squandered later on in time. But when Jaylen Brown had the ball in his hands, felt like the Celtics were going downhill and getting opportunities at the rim in which they needed. And I will say that's an even more important aspect of this game tonight for the Celtics in terms of the futuristic outlook for the Boston Celtics. It's when the Celtics are not shooting well, right? As we saw tonight, 27% from the 3-point arc tonight. The Celtics did not shoot well whatsoever. The Celtics need to adapt to a way of playing in which can actually get themselves points in moments in which they need it. Because I thought during tonight's game, there were a couple of possessions where I felt like the Celtics were just helter-skelter on the offensive end of the floor, and they didn't really have their flow. They didn't really have their rhythm. They weren't taking great shots out there. The shot quality was not great from three-point land. And in those opportunities, I thought the Celtics, when they're not actually finding great three-point looks, don't keep going to the three-point shot. Now, for me, I understand. I'm a math guy. Don't get me wrong. I love the math when it comes to twos and threes and the efficiency within the game of basketball, what shots you want to find and what shots you want to take. However, on a night where you're not actually getting those good shots and you're really just jacking up threes and not getting any good looks, you want to see the Celtics go downhill and get themselves some easy buckets, some easy opportunities. And even from that, you want to see them rebound well as well, from the standpoint of you get those putback opportunities, those second chance opportunities. That's something the Celtics, even in this game, I thought they've been doing well as of late, is really getting after it on the boards. Jaylen Brown tonight, the example of that, 9 rebounds for JB, but just the entire team, they out rebounded the Miami Heat. But that's the point there on just Jaylen Brown and his ability within his game in general, and how important that could be to the Boston Celtics, especially on a night like tonight where the Boston Celtics, they're not shooting well from three whatsoever, and they need to find a way in order to generate points in the moments needed. And sometimes that's not always going to be, oh, yeah, we understand we want to shoot the three ball, but if we're not getting good looks, if these looks are all contested and we're not really shooting great shots from the perimeter, go down inside the paint, get some easy buckets from 2 feet away. I mean, 2 feet away, that's the most efficient shot of basketball. Outside of the corner three, it's right there. It's a layup. The layup, it's obvious. It's 2 feet away. Celtics need to generate more of those shots when their three-point shots. I shouldn't even say when their three-point shots aren't falling. Typically, when the Celtics threes aren't falling, it's because they're taking bad shots. Now, some games, 100% they can just miss threes. We've seen that happen, but I thought tonight there were some bad shots laced in the Celtics shot selection, 100%. And I thought JB, for moments of this game, he strayed away from that. And what even impresses me too about Jaylen Brown and really I'll say Tatum as well, but just the rest of the Celtics right now, even in this loss, there were possessions in there in which I felt like, yes, the team was not completely oriented. The offense didn't run the way it was supposed to. You could tell it was very discombobulated, and it ended in one-on-one opportunities. But even in those opportunities, it's great to see how patient the Celtics can be with their offense at times. Seriously, if you go watch a team like the Washington Wizards right now, who have just been horrible all season, it's night and day when it comes to pressure on that end of the floor. When the Washington Wizards are pressured on the offensive end of the floor by a good defense, the shot selection and the way and the timing in which they throw up their shots, it's awful. It's horrendous. It's early shot clock. It's off a screen. You got two hands in your face. If you're Jordan Poole, whoever's throwing up the shots there in Washington, usually it's Jordan Poole. Earlier was Kyle Kuzma this season. But in Washington, I mean, it's an extreme example. You have one of the best teams in the NBA, and one of the worst teams. But the Washington Wizards, if you really watch them, it's horrendous. Now the Celtics, they get into those moments where they don't really find that rhythm offensively. They're not playing at their own pace. They're playing stagnant. But even in those moments, the Celtics are patient, and they'll find looks that are not the greatest of shots, but from an improvisational perspective, I mean, they're better than what they could have came up with, which is an early shot clock chuck off of a screen or off of an action where you have multiple hands in a guy's face. I mean, that's something the Celtics have been actually good at avoiding. Now, the one-on-one aspect of the Celtics offense when it becomes stagnant, I mean, that's always something the Celtics will still have somewhat of an advantage in, just because they have Brown and Tatum. So that's not always going to look as terrible as those possessions actually are. But the Celtics, from the maturity aspect of their team, this is a team 100% completely in their prime, because even in their bad moments, they look they don't look putrid. They don't look horrendous. I mean, they really don't. I mean, this was a bad game for the Boston Celtics, but there were silver linings in there throughout the game where, like I said, the rebounding, some of the downhill attack, the way the Celtics were patient with some of their possessions. Some of that is definite silver lining for this ball club, who's been playing tremendously as of late and really just ran into a dud of a game tonight. But I do want to bring up here, we were talking about Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's new due. Here we
Okay.
go. Jaylen Brown. I mean, I pulled up this picture, 10 minutes ago, and I was making sure. I was like, is this from 2019? Is this from the current day of the present? And of course, Jaylen Brown, got rid of his hair, posted it on Instagram the other night. But here you go. There's JB's new look for all those out there who couldn't catch the game, catching the recap here on Celtics Talk Weekly. But yeah, Jaylen Brown sporting a new look. Always interesting to see guys changing their look midway through the season. Always a bold move. Andrew, have you ever done that as a basketball player? Change your look halfway through the season, or are you just
Well, honestly,
regular guy?
one time I had to get it was we were getting photos done for like my freshman year. I had to get just like photos for the team, and one of my assistant coaches, Tyler Clark, shout out to him. TC Performance. He actually has his own training program. He's awesome. He's the best. He actually gave me a nice cut, kind of went like a buzz cut, and we took photos. And I was like, new me, new career, new college career. Here we go. And then I also, for the very first time in my career in college, for the first time in my life, I got a nice little fade. So something about a cut makes you feel good, So I don't know. Has the energy shifted once again for Jaylen Brown? He had a great game after this cut. Maybe Jaylen Brown is going to be on a tear now after this haircut.
Yeah, we do what Tatum said about when he got a haircut. When I get a haircut, I'm top 5. Top five what? Top 5.
Top 5?
Well, that's what always happens. I mean, I'll take everybody back to the origin of Afro Kyrie. I mean, when Kyrie came into the 2018-19 season, Kyrie, of course, was sporting the fro look, right? It kind of grew it out from the year before. And that was one of the more stylish Kyrie looks out there. But he started the season absolutely horrendously, and it was capped off by a performance in Detroit where he scored only 3 points. You think about how talented Kyrie Irving is out on a basketball floor. Scoring 3 points for Kyrie Irving, I mean, that is something you really do not see. He comes up with that performance in Detroit. Celtics blow out the Pistons anyway. That's actually Robert Williams' debut that game. Kyrie scored 3 points. Robert Williams came in, caught a nice alley-oop on a cut right down the middle of the lane. Forgot who threw the lob, but just a perfect lob to Robert Williams. But the next game was also against the Pistons. That game was at the Garden. However, that night it was a little home and home situation for the Boston Celtics. Kyrie goes, I believe he went to Mobar. So shout out Mobar. I don't know how active Mobar is out there, but Mobar cuts. Got to shout him out.
Everyone's getting their barber shout out then.
Yeah, the barbers.
Mobile barber shop. Shout out Dill Blunt. If we're all going for barbers.
I can't shout anybody out as you guys. I don't know if you guys can tell. I don't have any shout outs to give outside of Mobar though. Mobar was the guy. See, to me, I don't see Mobar out there anymore on social. He might be still out there. I'm saying that. I'll say that he might still be out there. Me personally, I haven't seen him, so I don't know how active Mobar is. But he used to be the guy for the Boston Celtics. Still might be. Who knows? But he cut Kyrie's hair. Of course, Kyrie went to Mobar, and Kyrie the next game came out, played the Pistons, same team, 31 points, super efficient from the floor, one of his best games of the early season that year, and that was the origin. It must have been the hair. Must have been, you talk about years ago, Michael Jordan, must have been the shoes, must have been the hair for Kyrie. But again, with Jason Tatum, that's an even better story because I believe that happened in the bubble too. I mean, Tatum, he had the curls at the beginning of the bubble, cut them all off, and I mean, he broke out in the bubble. He broke out in the NBA playoffs that year. And that was really Jason Tatum's coming out party as a legitimate, solidified NBA player. But as we see tonight, another change of the style, I will say. See this often. Another notable one I'll bring up. Aaron Baines. He had the man bun, and then halfway through the year, he went, nope, I'm going bald, and he went bald. I mean, you have those different looks
Derek White.
in the middle of the Derek White. Now that was before the season. I love Derek White's old hair. I absolutely loved it. I
Yeah.
mean, he went bald. I feel like it makes him look a little bit more
The national
intimidating out
media
there.
the national media bullied him into it.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's always Twitter. It's always Twitter.
Shame on anyone who didn't like that beautiful mane of curly hair up there.
Could have been his wife too. You never know, but
That's true. That's
whatever she says goes.
Right. You gotta listen.
Queen rules.
But
say that again, Franco.
Queen rules the castle.
Yep. But to comment on the Jaylen Brown's like physicality, watch like for all the analysts, like the older analysts that are commenting on the physicality of the game. Watch a Jaylen Brown game. He's physical, he's bruising players up, and like I just like if he played in that, oof.
See, people when it comes to the physicality of today's game. I mean, you got to watch a guy like Nikola Jokic out there as well. I mean, they're physical. The physicality. Now, what was it more physical back in the 90s, than the 80s, the 70s? Sure, because they had different rules, but it's not as if that's the thing that gets me about today's game is it's not as if today's game isn't as physical. I mean, you'll see out there on the floor if you really what I love to watch actually, surprisingly, is those phantom cams, the NBA releases where things go in slow motion and you watch from like a courtside view. Those really show. I mean, if you're thinking of yourself or anybody put in that situation, you're going, man. I mean, that would hurt. It's like you're going at that speed and being that physical with other guys who are 7 feet tall. I mean, that's another thing. 7 foot tall at 250 plus pounds. I mean, that would hurt. It's like you run into those guys and they're moving each other. I mean, they're moving each other. And looking at those videos, I always look at them and go, I mean, the game, when you really view it from a courtside perspective like that, a close-up perspective, a slow-mo perspective, there's a lot more respect you do have for the game from the standpoint it just doesn't look the same as, the bird's eye view we always watch, the typical broadcast view. That does not show the true physicality of today's game whatsoever. It just does not. You have to really get down to the floor level to see how just nasty it can be down there sometimes, especially on the interior when you're going towards the rim, towards the paint. It can be just a bloodbath in some occasions. Now, are there games where officials call it a little differently and some of that is mitigated? Sure, but then there are other games where it's completely allowed the entirety of the game and you can get away with essentially the same rules as what was implemented back in the 80s and 90s. And the game's physicality is certainly that's one aspect that people just get completely, it's the old heads, they get completely wrong about today's era. But I will say that kind of led me off on a little tangent here.
Well, you know what? We can continue that tangent tomorrow when we have Dan Shaughnessy join the show.
There you go.
Now, I will say this, Franco. There was like a million segments in here. I was like, when do we want to bring up Dan Shaughnessy?
You always have to cut them in. You have to cut in your promos whenever you can.
You have to.
And especially when you have the Dan Shaughnessy from the Boston Globe joining us. We're going to be talking about his new book that he had coming out during the pandemic. It's going to be a really fun conversation, so be sure to tune in for that when that comes out, and we'll keep you posted on that on social media as well.
100% Franco. 100% with that interview, folks. You're going to want to tune in. You're going to want to run up the view count. You're going to want to put it on TV and watch it. Watch it once, watch it twice, watch it a third time. Guarantee this interview, it's going to be one of the best Celtics Talk Weekly interviews we've ever had here within the program. I will say though, we did interview Andrew last week, so Shaughnessy, you got some. Andrew, I gotta say, we Celtics Nation Rise. This was pretty good interview. I would say that's another plug. Celtics Nation Rise, episode 30, episode 31, and episode 32 out there. But Andrew, you were on episode 30 specifically, folks. Go check that one out.
Check that one out as well. Yeah, great
Oh,
insight.
yes.
From Coach AJ, and get a little inside knowledge of the college basketball experience.
Oh, yes.
As March Madness continues.
Of course. Which I don't know. Final Four. Who you feeling, Andrew, for the Final Four? By the way.
So I had Florida win it all, but right now I'm going Duke. I just think that they are a powerhouse. They have depth. They're just talented on both sides of the ball. I just don't see any team really being able to stay with them the entire game, and I just don't see it. I just don't
see the obvious answer to me out there. Just a little Final Four tangent at the end of the show here before we close off. But I see Duke right now in the field, right? First of all, I had Auburn winning the whole thing. So I'm conflicted. I'm already conflicted because I had Auburn as the champion. But in the Final Four, I'm going, I kind of believe in Florida right now more than Auburn. I mean, Broome versus Houck, that's going to be I'm all for that matchup. Now, Houston, I'll say this. Houston, I think they're going to bother Duke. I think they have 100% the veteran experience, the physicality, the defense. Obviously, I mean, that's really the patented part of that Houston Cougars team with Kelvin Sampson is their defense. And I think with the younger Duke squad, you could see Duke disrupted just a little bit in a big spot. But that's what makes this tournament and this Final Four so interesting is Duke. I if you really look at every Final Four team, Duke it's seemingly the obvious team, the Blue Devils, because what they've done in this tournament, no teams even come close. And it's not as if they haven't played anybody. I mean, they just played Alabama and smoked them by 20. I mean, Alabama is a legitimate college basketball team when it comes to the upper echelon of college basketball. And Duke completely wiped them off the floor. It was never a competition. I mean, early on in the game, it was never a competition. And then throughout the game, I mean, Alabama, they tried to make a little bit of a run there in the second half, but Duke completely shut them down. And from that perspective, Duke, what they've done in this tournament and the talent they have, they should be the obvious pick. But you have 3 other number 1 seeds out there that I want to believe in just as much. Like it's like you go against Duke, or sorry, you go for Duke, you go against Houston. It's like, well, I don't want to go against Houston right now.
You don't want to. In Florida with Walter Clayton Jr., like that shot he had, someone compared it. They were like, "That's like a Curry-esque shot." Where like,
oh yeah, where he ran back out to the 3-point line and shot it. There were 2 shots in that game by Walter Clayton.
Giving me flashbacks to 2022.
Hey, Walter Clayton, the one way where he ran out to the 3-point line, shot it. That was the Curry-esque shot. That Curry shot was the one everybody remembers. Like, so that play where he essentially, he might have gotten an offensive rebound. I don't know if he drove or got an offensive rebound, but he eventually, of course, ran back out to the 3, and nobody picked him up. It was like you got him. Nobody picked him up. He just turns around and shoots, makes that. But then there's another shot late in that game, and it was I believe the shot that solidified that 9-0 run for themselves. That I think it tied the game, if I'm not mistaken, for Florida against Texas Tech. Yeah. At the end of that game, Walter Clayton, he goes to his spot like he's Tracy McGrady in that 13 points and 33 seconds game against the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, if you watch the film in that game of Tracy McGrady, he is straight up looking at the spot he wants to dribble to on the floor. He's looking at the spot, and in the film, it's majestic because he looks at the spot, dribbles straight to it, and the way he dribbles and pulls up and shoots, it's like nobody on the Spurs team is stopping me. Absolutely nobody. It doesn't matter who's in front of me right now, doubled or not. I'm dribbling to that spot. I'm pulling up right now. That was Tracy McGrady at the end of that Rockets Spurs game, where he scored 13 points in 33 seconds. That was Walter Clayton Jr., though, on that shot at the end of the game to solidify that 9-0 run and put Florida not necessarily in the driver's seat yet, but he tied the game for Florida. And then Houck, he had 2 phenomenal threes before that. And to me, I look at him, I go, ooh, could this guy be an NBA guy? Shoots the 3 ball well, rebounds well, pretty physical. It's like, I
I'm
kind
sure
of.
Brad's watching right now, trying to see
Yeah,
something stand out to him, considering, who knows, Porzingis, maybe, we have to make some moves this offseason, so we'll see.
But I mean, in that game for Florida, I mean those shots were clutch. And Walter Clayton, I mean, the way he dribbled through that spot, it was so reminiscent of Tracy McGrady, where it's like, this is my spot, I'm going to it, I'm pulling up, I'm making the shot, and that's exactly what happened. So it's just so hard to go against any of these guys in the tournament. You got Auburn, you have Bruce Pearl, Johnny Broom, and he's just phenomenal. He's just a phenomenal basketball player. Another NBA guy, got to get his 3-point shot up. I will say his percentage, but everything else, like super physical, defends, rebounds. But Florida, Auburn, Duke, and Houston, of course, in this year's Final Four for all those out there. But we originally started talking about this because March Madness, episode 30 of the Celtics Nation Rise podcast. Can go find that out
we might
on the
get another one.
Celtics Nation Rise YouTube channel and the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel.
Yeah, we might get another one with Coach A too. Might do a part 2 sometime later in the off season as well. So stay tuned for that.
100%. And
plugging
also,
away out here.
yeah, we pretty much used the last 10 minutes to just plug different. Hey, wish it lasted forever. Life with the Larry Bird Celtics. We'll just plug the book early here, Franco. We'll plug the book early. Go check out Dan Shaughnessy's book.
Yeah, use Celtics Weekly for 10% off. What other plugs can we throw out?
Give it a quick read before.
SeatGeek, $20 off.
No, this is where we should have ocean spray in here. I'm just saying already. Like, Franco, do you have an ocean spray bottle?
I just have this one.
Oh, just one. Just one. But it's filled with water, isn't it?
Maybe.
See, that's why I can't hold it up, folks. It's filled with water. We'll never get the ocean spray sponsorship if he holds it up with water.
Drinking it.
No, but see, I'll give another shout out. QT out there. I got a QT drink over here. QT. Let's give us come on. Give us some ad time, QT. We are in terms of the ads. Hit us up. Nike, Adidas. We're trying.
We run up to like 2-hour shows. We can squeeze in 30.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you read all these. You listen to all these hour and a half, 2-hour podcasts, and during it, it's like, oh, here's this 5-minute ad read in the middle. It's like, oh, we have 2-hour post game. It's like, oh, let's just stop. Oh, actually, my bad, guys. SeatGeek. Our SeatGeek player spotlight tonight. We already had a player spotlight out here. I didn't read the ad promo for it. We're plugging all these things at the end, but hey, I didn't read the SeatGeek player spotlight ad whatsoever. SeatGeek. Go get your seats at SeatGeek, folks. Yeah. I mean, come on, $20 off. And let's get this straight. Been saying 20% for like the whole season here. But hey, $20 off your first purchase if you use the code Celtics Weekly at checkout at SeatGeek. $20 off, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, really, go spam it. Go buy all your tickets on SeatGeek. I wouldn't do it in Memphis, but I would do it other places. I would suggest.
Do it at Eden Garden for this Friday when we're facing off with the Phoenix Suns. We can lead into a little preview of that. Obviously, they're down Kevin Durant for a week. Hopefully, if they are, that's a team that's competing for a play-in spot. So you can expect them to bring the same amount of intensity that the Miami Heat did tonight. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. Just it matters on how the Celtics are going to be able to bounce back from tonight's loss. Obviously, you want to see them come out of tomorrow's game hot. Obviously, getting the hot hands back on the team is necessary for this team heading into playoffs, just so they can carry out that momentum that they worked so hard to build in the past 6 games and earlier than that since February. Just not allowing tonight to become habitual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and these games coming up will be important for the Boston Celtics as they try to rebound from tonight's game. Still cemented in that number 2 spot. Still with the record, they played well. as of late. The Boston Celtics have 14-1 record in March, but however, now in April, 0-1 so far for the Boston Celtics. So they'll look to rebound in their final 6 games of the regular season. The Boston Celtics play upcoming on the horizon. But that is going to do it for us here tonight. We will have you covered for all of those games moving forward. Every single one of those 6 games to end off the season as the Celtics look to rebound from an awful loss tonight, 103-124 against the Miami Heat at the TD Garden. The Boston Celtics just completely lay an egg after their 6-0 West Coast road trip and their 9-0 stretch over the last 9 games. Celtics 9-game winning streak coming to an end tonight. Didn't get to double digits, didn't get to 10, but still mighty impressive. The Celtics are winning at the rate in which they are at this point in the season. Didn't happen tonight, but we will see what happens moving forward with the Boston Celtics as there's still 6 games left in the regular season for the Celtics to really rebound from this awful, putrid, no good loss. But we will have you covered for all of those games on the CTW post-game show. That is going to do it for us tonight. As I always say, thank you for watching. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me tonight, Andrew Quinn and Nick Franco. Folks, cue the music. Go Celtics.